Hmm. Okay. And looks like we got the usual old Protoss shenanigans, getting that probe scout out, doing the good old hatchery block location. Scarlett not going to deal with it at all, just goes straight over to the third base. And yeah, I mean, like a very typical looking opening over here from both these players. So just to quickly, I feel like most people already both know Scarlett and Nina, especially anyone that's watching right now. But just for like the sake of things, we'll say Scarlett, very, very well known for both having like two different modes. She has like an ultra macro mode and an ultra cheese mode. And it's like, she doesn't usually do stuff in between. Scarlett's always been like a player of extremes in a lot of ways. And I feel like Nina is like the player, her playstyle is all about get up like a solid macro or something defense behind things, like a transition point and everything, but get ultra microable units to just control the game. That is Nina's, bread and butter.
Yeah, we always talk about Nina's micro. And I guess the best representation of that was in her PvPs, where she refused to do anything but blink stalkers, actually, at some points. So I think that's going to be something that could be useful with like adept openers, right? As much as people just want to say that adepts are a move, there's actually a bit of micro involved. But it is, I mean, you must agree, I guess, that it is a lot about just the surprise factor. It's a lot about the build order and can they get a surprise onto the Zerg, since it's no longer just adept, like it once was. So even here we have a Stargate opener, which is not too surprising on this map, and we might even have multiple Stargate openers, but like it's not so much the Stargate that we're paying attention to, it's that Void Ray versus Oracle, and then that third Nexus timing, which is also what Scarlett's going to be paying attention to, because to ask for anything more, unless she gets Overlord speed, it's unlikely to receive more scouting.
Yeah, I'm not too sure exactly what Nina tends to favor these days, although I do kind of consider her more of like an Oracle-ish player, or, something along those lines, just because I think, again, like micro ability of units is something that I think Nina factors in. And I think part of it is just because she has a lot of confidence in her micro, and part of it is just, we say it so often, but Nina plays her best StarCraft when she is enjoying herself, and I feel like the more micro she's able to throw out there, the more she enjoys herself.
Well, I won't say that multiple Void Rays isn't exactly microable, but she could try and prove us wrong. It is a Void Ray starts. The Adept micro on the natural is a little overzealous. I think it stuck around for a little while longer than it really should have. There's even a pylon block that was actually canceled. I had to double check, man. The skin that Nina is using, when things are canceled, it looks like they were destroyed in the worst way possible. Like charred ground and particles everywhere. Calm down, chill out.
Yeah, it's basically like if every single time you were like, let's build this, this structure over here, and you're like, actually, no, forget it. Instead of just like quietly tearing down the building, it's like everything gets destroyed with dynamite. Everything gets
yeah. You're like, got it, nuke it. Understood.
Understood, sir. We will bulldoze it down immediately. Yeah.
Scarlett's going for a +1 melee opener here. So, I mean, I guess confirming, very fast confirmation too in that Stargate, right? She got scouted with the Lings, and then Void was going to tell her anyways. But not fearing an early attack. And that is fair. The early attack, and I'm saying early a lot because I'm specifying the early attack is not that big of a deal. This is a mistake. Actually, having drones where queens are not protecting is a big mistake. All 4 go down, and the Oracle barely takes any damage. Oh, yep, now it's going to take damage.
Check for 5 or 6. Oh my God, doesn't even need a sacrifice.
That's really quite an amazing Oracle right there. Now the queens are out of position, so they can't tear it down here. I guess Scarlett was either thinking there wasn't going to be an Oracle opener, or just that her queens would actually be in place, and they weren't.
Yeah, I mean, to Scarlett's credit, like I feel as though it's not the most common thing for Protoss players to go Void Ray then Oracle. Usually it's like, I will go Void Ray and then maybe like, just stop Stargate production there, or I'll make more Void Rays. Or you just go Oracle and then you go Void Ray or something. But yeah, may have just caught Scarlett a bit off guard there. She was definitely trying to cut some corners. Regardless though, +1 melee is getting closer and closer to finishing up. And we'll see if she's going to be able to just immediately start up +2 melee, but she still doesn't have her lair on the way.
No, she does not. I feel like that will start soon. There you go.
Okay.
But anyways, my point before the Oracle started doing damage was that the early attack's not going to hit her, but an Adept attack is on the way. Now, this is a very late Adept attack if we compare it to Showtime's Adept after Void Ray opener, I believe. I think, was it on this map as well? Anyways, it was just a Void Ray, and then right into a Twilight Council and 4 gateways. Nina has actually made 2 Oracles, so Resident Glaives is not even really close to being finished, and Scarlett is planning a very aggressive maneuver with her Ling Baneling. This might have looked like a defensive setup, like, oh, it's going to protect me against the Adepts, but it's posturing for an offensive one. Nina's going to scout it. She's got Oracle energy. She's got her Adepts already pre-split, in fact, and quite a few of them.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty difficult, I feel like, for Scarlett to make work. The Banelings are trying to find a nice, juicy connection over here. Eventually just decide, nope, let's just go for the mineral line. Gets 3 or 4 workers over there, but with only 1 Baneling left over and that Baneling does get sniped off, it looks like that is a ultra solid hold there for Nina.
It is, and that's kind of scary for the defense. Ling Baneling isn't really so... It's not dependable, and that's been a problem. Like, initially when like when there was still a charge lot all in, I feel like when the classic Adept all in, the one that came out with like 7 or 8 gateways or whatever, there were people trying to make Baneling defenses work, but it really requires, like, it has to get a good hit with the Banelings, which isn't guaranteed. This one, I mean, actually wasn't even that great, even though Nina was pretty clumped up, but it looks like she hasn't really found herself into a tight enough corner, so that +1 melee on the Lings does make them a lot better when they can grab us around.
Yeah, majority of the Adepts do go down. Even finding a few workers is definitely going to be nice here for Nina, but the Oracles actually dive back in. I think this is like the 2nd or 3rd Queen that they're going to be able to potentially pick off. Nina tries to dive back in there for it. Not quite going to be able to get it since she runs out of that Oracle energy. All in all, I mean, how committed do you think Nina needed to be to that Adept attack? Like, how much damage do you really have to get done there?
That's a good question. It's hard to say. I mean, Scarlett's attack really didn't do a whole lot, so it's not like that was a perfect defense on top of a perfect macro game for Scarlett. And then for Nina, I mean, she did take down a lot of Lings. I mean, her Oracles have they've done more damage than the Adepts did. I feel like they should have gotten more because I feel like they have the potential to get more. As far as if Nina is going to cry a river about the Adept losses and the way that they went down, she's probably going to be a little bummed, but I think the game does, in fact, go on, as we see here. Yeah, the Adepts probably could have just maybe, like, actually threatened the 4th more so even. Like, shaded, but then left, or not shaded, rather. Threaten it, but not do it, and then get themselves into a tight corner. Suddenly, Scarlett is just like, I don't know, can't really do anything against them because, again, she was only on Lings. But it's over and done with. Now the rest of the game continues on, and Scarlett's on 4 going on 5 bases with the 79 workers working on +2 melee, centrifugal hooks, and Hydralisk.
Yeah, and while Scarlett's getting up all of those upgrades and getting up reared up for the later stages of the game, Nina's kind of doing the same, getting up her own immortal count. It's already up to 3 and getting on a 4th, adding on Storm, which should be finishing up soon. Has a decent number of High Templars also already warped in, so they're going to start building up that energy for the Storm. So I think both these players have the tools they need for the next stage of the game, but Nina's is going to be the, you know, as Protoss B, the slightly more dependent army for like a good engagement angle and just having really, really on-point micro for the Storms and the force fields.
It's definitely not Nina's place to be out in the map, but I don't mind she's clearly a creep spread, and that's fine enough, I guess, but especially without a Revelation tagging the army, I'd be petrified to do that. And Nina, I guess, is feeling confident that Scarlett isn't quite ready to go, and she just have an Oracle patrolling the attack paths instead of just kind of trying to get the Revelation. That's good enough, and it looks like the time Scarlett gets ready to engage, she's got double Baneling bombs set up, she's got the army set up in the middle of the map, continuing to creep spread. If she actually does pull the trigger, Nina is going to have a decent army supply, and Storms, and Sentries, so I feel like it's about more so what do these Baneling drops do.
Yeah, and on the other side, Nina is not really getting a whole lot done with her own Warp Prism, so you need to have a solid defense if you're not going to also do some counter-offensive and even things up that way. Baneling Bomb number 1 coming into the main base. Nina has a pretty quick reaction, pulls back all of the workers, and it looks like those Banelings are not being super well controlled. They are just immediately dropping on out. Go straight into these Stalkers, and this Baneling Bomb also just gets stopped, and so does the Baneling Run By, or at least some of it does.
Could have been worse.
Yeah.
Could have been a lot worse. I mean, we consider how many Banelings went down, plus Overlord drops cost gas as well. The Overlord itself, that was actually pretty damn good. And Scarlett didn't even find any success over here, though now she's looking for it, trying to go for around acceleration zones. They're making this terrifying as some Banelings do collide in, and that is going to be a poor fight indeed for Nina. The last second recall is only going to save like 3 units there. The supplies aren't that bad, but that was awfully scary.
It definitely got very awkward for a moment. Another Archon is about to finish up, and that's going to help out Nina quite a bit. A lot of these Lings and Banelings are going to be coming out of that stasis trap soon, so I know that Nina really wants to be able to push back Scarlett before that happens. So it's not just more army supplies suddenly showing up in the fight. Oh, okay. Banelings don't manage to actually get any kills over there, and Nina freeing up the Archon that was trapped behind the cannon in the wall. Oh, that's a little bit awkward, but thankfully not going to be the difference maker for the fight. Okay, well, Banelings exploding as they come out of stasis trap on top of High Templar is not ideal, but you know, they'll survive.
At least it wasn't three Banelings, right? So Nina banking quite a lot of minerals. I think just was like not quite getting all of her gases set up. A lot of pulling away from the Baneling bombs and engaging in the army. That supply could be used for harassment, and that Warp Prism is still alive. Scarlett was actually tracking it earlier, just couldn't actually kill it. Still sees it now, and oh no. Okay, nope, she's not going to grab it. There you go. Okay, so Zealot run-bys can now be very powerful. And Nina can just focus again on the high-powered units of her main army. She's replacing the Immortals, maybe more Archons as she gets gas. But, with Storms, the ideal situation here is that Nina will always see an incoming fight and have Storms almost like preemptively down.
That's definitely going to be the ideal here. Although, as we saw in that other engagement, accelerator zones can kind of catch you a little bit by surprise. Hydra Link Force going to be able to find these charge slots over here. The Warp Prism is going to have enough time to escape out alive with the DTs in its tow, but Hydras are definitely going to be hyper aware of the potential for that Warp Prism to move back in, I would think. But well, Scarlett pulls back all the Hydras to help deal with the army potentially moving out to the north side.
I am really impressed with Nina actually like moving at all, honestly. I know that sounds like, I don't know, like the lowest, expectation, but it's really important that Scarlett is at least cut off of a couple of active creep tumors. Like she's pretty quick to replace them, but Nina, if she was a less confident Protoss, would already have all of the map taken by Scarlett, and she would just be like completely blind. Whereas right now, she doesn't have a lot of information. She can't really even get revelations on the army. Warp Prism in her army is just the only thing giving sight. It's still better. Like she still has more room to search around the map without engaging on creep. The more she clears up creep, which means eventually, hopefully, she gets to push into an actual base. But Scarlett, even though it's she's consistently moving left and right, she's really worried about these run-bys. She's almost always prepared for the main attack.
A lot of Banelings being used over there to clean up those charge lots on the right-hand side by the Warp Prism, but these Banelings not really going to feel good about it going into Archons. The Lurkers, though, definitely going to be enough to push Nina back. Now, kind of like what you were saying, a lot of that creep strike cleanup has actually bought Nina a lot of space on that left-hand side of the map. So that does make it a bit more awkward for Scarlett, who doesn't have as much vision and basically is trying to use those Lurkers in that army now to try and push back Nina. Narrowly avoiding a stasis trap. I should have vision of the stasis trap. Okay, yeah, there it goes. But Baneling's gonna come rolling on forward, and Nina is pretty far out of position for both of these run-bys.
Stasis trap helps out a little bit, but then no more. Last second wall in is actually pretty good. Nina's going to continue to the attack. This is a really scary thing to do. You know they still have Banelings somewhere out there. You know have Lurkers that are about to have adaptive talents, and that's actually super scary. Everything's coming back so quickly. All the Lurkers re-burrow, and Nina cannot break that. Even though the Lurkers don't have a lot of protection, they are their own protection. That is so many Lurkers with their upgrades.
Nina also lost the Warp Prism heading into the main base of Scarlett. I think that Nina's really hoping, okay, if we're going to turn this into a wonky base trade-ish situation, I'll at least get some Zealot weapons in your main, but that doesn't end up happening, and now this army's getting trapped. A big recall happens, but a lot of these units go down before the recall finishes. Like you said, those Lurkers devastate the army of Nina, and now Nina doesn't really trade out quite the same amount of damage that she took.
Nah, not quite. I mean, I think it could have been a lot worse, but it's not over yet. So many of the Lurkers still alive. There's 11 of them. with both their range and their quick burrow, really able to get across the map in both defensive and offensive ways. Actually, Nina going to come from behind a little bit, cut off the reinforcements, try and get an angle, but it looks like that 5th base is a goner. Or base trading?
Maybe
Base trading? She's
maybe just trying to cut off reinforcements again.
Okay.
But
all right.
I was thinking either that, or she was also thinking about maybe warping in some zealots on the other base that was getting sieged and doing a nice flank, but ends up backing off. Tempest is going to be arriving. That's actually going to help out quite a bit as long as she can get the Oracle Revelation tags on these lurkers, which, speaking of which, where are those oracles? There aren't still 2 oracles alive, and yeah, it looks like they're just drained on energy right now.
Yep, use it to clear up the lurker. So the base didn't go down when it said. Scarlett actually showing some respect to Nina's potential army engagement, but it still seems like Scarlett's in a good position. I say that, and then a bunch of storms go down. Last second micro away from them, but I think there's still 2 more storms. Lurker's getting a little bit low, but nothing to really kill them. Scarlett's actually running a bit thin on units, and Nina is reinforced with charge off. She's got Tempest, now going to target those down. Perhaps Scarlett overstaying her welcome there.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. It got very, very close there. If Scarlett just had a few more Hydras, she may have been able to break through, but at the end of the day, looks like Nina is going to be able to hold on to that very, very important base there, which she really needs if she wants to go and make this big carrier transition happen. She's already added on +1 weapons. She's adding on +2 weapons now. She's making 1 carrier at a time, but you can see, like, economically, and Nina's pretty stretched thin. She really needs that base mining and operational.
Scarlett doesn't have a bank, but it's like very consistent mining. And she doesn't have a bank because she just made a bunch of lurkers, upgrades, as well as starting her transition to carriers. Because I think she acknowledges that, especially if she couldn't take that base down, there is going to be a growing Protoss air threat. So she can't just win this with Hydra Lurker, but she's adapting the situation. That does give Nina a little bit more time to, I guess, build up the carrier count, maybe get an upgrade, maybe some static defense. But Scarlett's already encroaching. She's got Vipers to support any anti-air she does have.
Viper's going to be a very scary prospect for both the carriers, but also these Tempests that are trying to siege out those lurkers from a nice, safe distance. So we're going to end up seeing Nina probably try and use those High Templars for feedbacks to the best of her ability, but it's just so tough because the lurkers themselves are going to zone out the High Templars, and it just makes it very difficult to get effective feedbacks off on those Vipers.
Yeah, it is. And, all right, that's actually, I don't think the Corruptor count's not extremely high. The Hydras were a little out of position too, but yes, once the anti-air is also involved with the abducts, if anything that's abducted goes down. So Nina, now new problem is trying to get to a 6th base. Like she's maybe gonna get maxed out on a decent late game army. She's getting close to it anyways, but she definitely won't have a lot of static defense. She certainly won't have any bank, and her upgrades are getting, I guess, more and more mediocre as Scarlett is investing into double Spire upgrades.
Shield battery overcharge is already popped, but finally it looks like that fight is actually going to commence and make use of it. We end up seeing some pretty good storms coming on out, both on the lurkers, but even some of the corruptors getting hit by it. The problem is it looks like those carriers are on the verge of all dying right here, and with the High Templars also starting to go down, there's just barely any ground forces left over here for Nina. You see it reflected in the supply. It was a close fight for a really long time, but like you said, that consistent army, or that consistent economic edge that Scarlett had, you're really showcasing itself now.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a better fight, you know, if maybe there was 2 more carriers, or maybe more like 4 more Void Rays, a couple more Archons, if the storms had been better on the grouped up Corruptors. But there are so many things happening in that fight. It's not like Nina could have just ignored the lurkers completely. She also had to take that out of the equation. So the Corruptors did manage to do their little dance, you know, clump up, dance around the storms. Didn't have to worry about 1 Void Ray prismatically aligned, and took down the air army. Nina not want to tap out too quickly. I mean, I guess still holding on to the hope that the 5th base is attainable. I don't know about that. At half the supply, Scarlett is just going to, I think, run in with this maxed out army and win.
Yeah, this isn't like, you know, some of the crazy PvP base trade situations we've seen with Nina, where it's like Nina has this hyper-mobile force and makes magic happen. It's going to be army versus army. Nina realizes it's not going to happen. And Scarlett takes the first game.
That was a pretty excellent game by both of them, though. I mean, it started off with a little bit of a question mark, like, oh, did Baneling do enough damage? Did the Adepts do enough damage? Funnily enough, they both did very, poor amount of damage with both of their attacks, which kind of put us into a level playing field. But then I think one of the things that maybe really hurt Nina's chances in that game, towards the later section of it, was that her War Prism never got to get going. Her harassment actually never bothered Scarlett. It traded out occasionally, like a lot of Banelings were used on it, but it was never something that Scarlett actually worried about or took direct damage from.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up. And it even reminds me just when it got into that almost base trade-ish situation there where Nina encountered that hard wall of lurkers. If that War Prism had survived, or even just survived long enough to get up that big round of 8 to 10 zealots inside the main base of Scarlett, which, it made it to the main base and just got sniped off there. That game looks, I feel like, very, very different, where Nina has actually done a lot of counter damage, maybe has sniped off some tech there. The lurkers can't all just be this massive clump of 10, 12 lurkers that just hard stop the army. They have to split off, or you have to use reinforcements to go deal with these zealots and everything. And Nina probably makes a little bit more progress there, maybe even makes it out alive with a bit more of that army supply. Things really start to look different quite quickly there, if that War Prism gets involved, or it actually is able to get some damage done.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about more of just the macro kind of harassment aspect. That you're right about that base trade, which is just so weird. I kind of almost forgot about it, base trades usually are the determining factor of a lot of games, but that one was it wasn't even quite literally a base for base. It was just positioning versus positioning. And then everyone just was okay,
Yeah.
calm down, guys, let's chill out. But you're right. If the War Prism had been there, it provides a lot more opportunity to pull Scarlett apart as she raced back home to defend. So there's I think that in general, lacking pressure from Nina that ultimately ended up in Scarlett's favor. She did take the map for the most part. There was that little weird push out, and that was kind of it for Nina. Otherwise, everything else was being pushed back. So still, I think a very good game from both players. As I said, I think that gives a lot of hope for Nina fans out there that she can actually take the series. We move on to Death Aura for game 2. In the top left for Team Exxon, she is Nina.
And down to the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have the blue Zerg player representing Team Bravestar. It is Scarlett.
Last game, it was kind of funny how their respective openers didn't really end up defining the game that much. I mean, Scarlett went for a pretty surprising Ling Baneling attack. It feels like it's been a while since I've seen that attempt on a Protoss player. Mm-hmm. And then Nina was doing something that I think if she was caught off guard, and there's 8 Adepts, yes, but they're all clumped up, that's very different. But I don't have to fill time anymore. A Forge gets thrown down with Nina's Gateway.
Oh, okay. So there are a few ways you can do these kind of can't rushes and stuff, and especially this is one of my favorite ways, just because it's the standard macro player's way of doing a cannon rush. Okay, well, the pylon going down over there, I wonder if Scarlett's just thinking it's a fake out now, because that was definitely misplanted.
Oh god.
Oh, she cancels the Forge. Okay.
That is very awkward. Just, I mean, what is the actual, just look at the losses, I suppose. It's 62 minerals, doesn't sound that bad.
Yeah, what kind of sucks is that it's a little bit of a mental blow also. It's not the end of the world like you said, but the Nexus comes down a little bit later, because obviously normally you're going Gate Nexus, and in this case you go Gate Forge. You throw out a pylon, so that's 250 minerals that were sunk in for a moment that were delaying the Nexus. Then you cancel both of those, have to micro the probe out, and then you go build your Nexus. It's definitely not ideal.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a 20 worker Nexus, but yeah, the timing was very off. The Stargate follow-up coming through as Nina tries to play out a regular game. I mean, to Scarlett, it's funny that maybe she'll never know if that was supposed to be real or not. But I think she'll probably feel kind of the differences of the timings and be like, what happened?
Yeah.
Something's amiss. But ultimately, she still needs to get to that scout in the Stargate, which 2 Lings could actually try and run by, but it looks like they're not going to.
Yeah, always the fun part of a PvZ as a Protoss player where you're like, there is this fun period of time where like your wall is not totally complete and you're like, I know that Lings could get in right now and I just really hope they don't make some Lings and start trying to run them by, but gotta be safer now, like you said, as the Adept will even make its way across the map on the side that the Lings were on, so the Lings even end up retreating back. There's going to be a follow-up Void Ray behind this for Nina, so she'll be able to shut down some of those Overlords as well.
Yeah, I like that Nina actually kept the Adept at home. Maybe she was planning on blocking out the 2 Lings because they got the Scout last game, or maybe she was even a little scared of Scarlett doing her own Ling all in, but the Shade to Scout ahead of time, and then actually like, okay, yeah, I can commit to it. Now Nina is finally getting her own scouting, and fortunately for her, it is actually just everything's above board. Scarlett's going for a bunch of drones, and Nina, well, is supposed to be killing that Overlord, can now decide her follow-up to the Stargate.
Yeah, that Overlord survives long enough to actually see that it is going to be an Oracle being produced right now from the Stargate, so should be more prepared than the last game for the Oracle harass, hopefully. Already starting up some Spore Crawlers. And ideally is not going to just leave one of the bases totally unprotected against Oracles.
Oh, it looks like Nina was planning on doing an Adept attack with this, like not Resident Enclaves though. She's investing into another gateway, which that proxy pylon that just got canceled there was already kind of like, I think, a tell to Scarlett. This matchup isn't the matchup where you just kind of place pylons around, So yeah, with the third gateway especially, that was Nina's intention. Now it's a bit more awkward. She could still do it. You can still make the dips back at home and then run across the map. Maybe she has tipped off Scarlett too much.
Yeah, I mean, Scarlett is just mostly making workers with a small handful of some of these Lings coming on out. Again, like if you're not waiting for Resident Enclaves, I mean, I guess it does hit a good bit earlier on, but yeah, regardless, it looks like it's just going to be the Oracles darting around the map, trying to get a bit of damage done, and the Adepts going to be chilling at home by that third base, adding on the Forge, adding on the Robo, and getting ready for the next stage of the game.
Could also be adding on a Twilight Council.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
It'll come down eventually. But I'm paying attention to make sure it does come down. Oracle not finding too much success. I mean, delaying the fourth is always nice. So the Void Ray coming along. They actually do have to bring over Queens, plural, to try and get that down. But Scarlett's just gonna take the other fourth base. All right.
Yeah. Looks like that Void Ray is finally out of shield, so we'll get pushed back. Normally, I feel like when I see the Void Ray Oracles like joining forces, usually it's to clean up creep spread, but diving in on top of the Queens, definitely a more aggressive option there. We do finally see that Twilight Council coming down, but we also see Scarlett adding on the Spire over here, and she loves doing this kind of stuff, especially against Protoss players that are kind of just sticking around on like those Adept, Sentry, Immortal heavy armies.
And I think it's kind of unlikely that Nina actually does any type of decent push. So, I mean, Nina, I feels like her Twilight Council is just late because she had gas for a while, even after producing her Stargate units, and then put it down. But even outside of that potential mistake, she did go for a Void Ray into 3 Oracles. Like, if she moves out, it's going to be with probably a basic army, not charge. Maybe +1, but like how many units, right? So I don't know if Scarlett's reading into that and finding some safety in going to Aspire, because if it is more of a streamlined build towards a +1 attack from the Protoss, though that's the type of situation that leads into the game where like the mutas kind of have to go, wait, do I want to be made? Hold on here. But if Nina's going to be at home all the time, and especially if Nina's not going to scout the Spire, that's another issue. And yeah, Scarlett can just go right into mutas.
Yeah, I think the Spire is behind out of the natural of the third base, so the Oracles have quite a bit of diving in to actually try and find that. They do move into the main base, but end up backing out through the same way that they came in. These Lings and Roaches also probably going to distract Nina for a little bit, so those Oracles probably not going to be all that active for a bit. Oh, this is all just, I feel like it's all just setting up so perfectly to completely catch Nina off guard with that Spire.
Yeah, I also wouldn't be surprised. I don't think Nina went for double hallucination scouts in the last game. I didn't actually check, but if that was also something that Scarlett noticed, there's just everything seems to be giving Scarlett the green light to go from mutas. So this is an excellent choice on Scarlett's part. Nina gonna have to do that last second reaction, which is just very unideal for the Protoss.
Well, I think that Scarlett knows the big targets over here. Go for those High Templars. Looks like one Archon was morphed in as soon as those mutas were spotted out, but already losing a couple of the sentries, losing one of the High Templar, losing a handful of probes, lost the Void Ray. These mutas have already paid for themselves, but Scarlett is not going for the light muta harass style. She's adding on more. She's going up to 14. No, actually, potentially even more than that. She has a +1 flyer attack as well. Yes, sure, you could say, oh, you can just get Phoenix against this, but will you die before you get up enough Phoenix for this?
Exactly. You know, as far as surprise defenses go, I think this is an okay one. Usually if it's a complete surprise, no static defense, there's actually 20 probes go down because they're trying to get through their own SimCity to react to the main and natural. But that was a bit more of a frontal attack, right? So Scarlett might have given Nina an opportunity. It's a May, right? The 4th base looks like it is going to go down on something that Nina was hoping would not happen as she transfers her probes. The Muta is still trying to find engagements where they can take it, keep the Stalker count low, keep the Phoenix count low. And I do still think this absolutely snowballs in Scarlett's favor. But especially if Nina had been able to save that 4th Nexus there, this could have been one of those unique games where the surprise Muta just didn't straight up kill the Protoss.
Yeah, if the Phoenix had all been staying alive, I'd feel a little bit better about this. There are 2 being made at a time, but we're still just going up to 4 after those next 2 pops. So it's a really, really tough spot. And like you said, the 4th base getting sniped off hurts. Scarlett is expanding basically around the entire map during all of this. She's making a bunch of banelings to actually take on that ground force. And I think that right now, yeah, I mean, the Phoenix are obviously the main thing that you want to help try and deal with these mutas, but until you get to a high enough number, Stalkers are important, and there are a lot more mutas than there are Stalkers, Zombie Grub.
Yeah, that's not the only Stargates, but you want 2 base Stargate, or 2 Stargate production. 4th base not quite done. A couple stasis traps could actually change the tide of battle, but Scarlett's coming in from 2 different directions, or actually not so much. She's going to use the Banelings.
Okay.
Hell with it. On the 3rd base, she could even maybe take down the actual Nexus. She's going to go after every last probe and say that's a trade I'm okay taking. I guess because she's about to be rich. She's not quite rich yet. That's one of those ones where you're like, but I think it's all right.
This is really, really brutal. I really commend Nina for hanging in there, but this is definitely not going to be the kind of fights that you want to be taking. Those stasis traps, my God, catching a lot of Banelings over there and getting the Revelation tag on these mutas. You can keep an eye on them. The Phoenix count is actually growing a decent bit, man. I'm sure Nina would absolutely kill for the resources to be able to invest into, a Fleet Beacon, get up Anion Pulse Crystals. The Phoenix actually just start massacring mutas then with a lot less intensive micro, but I just don't think it's really in the cards for Nina right now, not with the economy she has.
And what also really sucks about this is that she never started up Blink. Like, her Stalker count's actually getting kind of good. She could be chasing down some of the Banelings, reacting stronger to multi-pronged harassment, but instead she has been bleeding off in both economy as well as actual army supply this entire time. So Scarlett with a 60 supply, 70 supply lead. Really not any splash here for Nina to help against the overwhelming numbers of the Zerg. And did start, with the not scouting the Spire, and that's ultimately what truly killed Nina. Yeah, she's trying to play it out. But it is game.
Yeah, and this is honestly the kind of thing that I was talking about, where I feel like Scarlett is such a incredibly talented player with just understanding StarCraft and identifying all these things, like you were saying. Scarlett is the player who doesn't miss the signals of like, oh, this is really good to just kill you with an outright massive muta flood. Like, I just make a ton of mutas, and she makes it look like abusive. She makes it look like she's found exploits in the game in terms of like, oh, how is Protoss supposed to deal with this? But Scarlett just picks up on the exact perfect signals for like, this is the time to use this strategy.
Looks like she's not gonna kill Nina yet. She's actually getting into more technology and more bases, even an aggressively placed base for the rich Vespian Geyser. As she continues to fill up her bank, fill up her economy, but taking out the last few probes, taking out the last few army units.
Yeah.
Nina's still not gonna tap out.
A lot of the High Templars also died over there, which I don't even know if you prefer them as Archons now or what, but a handful of the Phoenix also going down. That actually does take out a majority of the mutas, so we're down to 6 mutas, but now Corruptors are on their way, a Greater Spire's on the way. It is also effectively a, 3 base Protoss versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 base Zerg, if you count the aggressive base that Scarlett took at Nina's side of the map on her high yield gas geysers. Yeah, that is that's double the bases, actually, more than double the bases.
She's currently tripling Nina's mineral income and at least doubling her gas income. Like it's a lot of resources. You know, like 10 minutes, or not 10 minutes ago, but like 5 minutes ago, I was like, oh, you know, Scarlett's not rich yet. She doesn't have a huge bank yet. And I was mostly talking about the gas at that time. Well, she still doesn't have that much of a bank. Her economy is insanely consistent, even the gas, almost matching the minerals at some point. So that's kind of insane.
Yeah, well, I think it's very unlikely for Nina to make a comeback happen in this game. I think that Nina is the kind of player who, like, she likes to end at least on like a semi-positive note where she feels like she accomplished something. She's able to like get something done, make some cool micro defense happen or something before she finally goes out, trades somewhat effectively. So maybe that's what she's hoping for, just to start getting a little bit of momentum back before she heads into game number 3, since she's probably one of the most momentum-based players I can think of in the North American scene. But yeah, that's not going to happen with that kind of RME. GG, Scarlett takes a 2-0 lead in this best of 5.
I think Nina is also a very good Protoss player for when a Zerg player gets kind of stubborn about how they kill their opponent. So like, you know, they're like, I'll just like rush Banelings into you. And they're like, well, I'm holding on, so be careful. Well, Scarlett actually continued to progress in her technology. So yes, when the Broodlord showed up, Nina really didn't have a chance against that. We're going to go to a break, and I guess when we return, we'll find out if it is going to be a 3-0 or if, like many other series of the day, Nina can bring it back.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are moving back into game number 3 here between Scarlett and Nina. Should be a pretty interesting one, but right now, even though Nina's been putting up a really, really good fight, Scarlett has been able to climb out ahead every single time so far. Is now sitting up 2-0 in this best of 5.
Yeah, Nina not quite able to, I guess, show that she can actually take down Scarlett, which people coming in for the first time, you only watch the play of something, you're like, well, duh, of course, like, what's Nina doing here? Well, Nina actually did take down Scarlett very recently in the group. So if this does end up being a 3-0, it's not really a true testament to Nina's skill. And I don't think it's going to end up being a 3-0. I guess a 3-2. I'm still more on the side of maybe a 3-1 realistically. But point is, I do think that Nina's going to get a game as long as it doesn't look like the last one. The last one was just like a blindside Nina's classic PVZ, right? And it just snowballs from there.
Yeah, pretty brutal. But I mean, I feel like you kind of mentioned it in the beginning of that last game. Like there was small things that Nina was probably planning to do to actually be more aggressive outside of just the oracles that probably would have given her some information about, hey, like my opponent is maybe thinking about teching up, or maybe they're cutting workers or making less army supply to get up a spire. And that was going to be the adept attack without resonating glaives potentially, the proxy pylon and stuff being thrown down, but then abandoning that plan because it gets found out. Like I think it just generally was not a great start there for Nina.
Let's not forget she started off with a cannon rush and she canceled the forge.
That too, actually, as well, which is a bit unfortunate because I actually think like that was the ideal opening kind of from Scarlett for Nina to pull something like that off, where it was like a good map for it. It was Scarlett going for a hatch, gas, then pool opening. Yeah, just a bit unfortunate there for Nina.
Oh, we're on Lightshade for potentially the final map of the series. In the top left, as the blue Zerg, she is Scarlett.
And down to the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have the red Protoss player representing Team Exxon. It is Nina. You know, a small part of me was hoping that we would see Nina actually go for the same kind of like gate forge, but I think she already pulled her probe back to the mineral line and everything. But I was gonna say, just because, like you said, she canceled the forge, so there was just basically no signs whatsoever to Scarlett that there was going to be an actual cannon rush, that it was actually committed there.
Yeah, it's very awkward, you know? If we interview Scarlett, I'm going to ask, like, you know, she's trying to cannon rush you. Those are actually real. Well, I'll have to wait for that one. Yeah, well, is Lightshade even a good map for it?
It's not, but yeah, it's really not the best map for it. I think you can do, so you can, if I recall correctly, I think you can do a 3 pylon wall cannon rush, but not the kind that Nina was going for.
Okay, gotcha, yeah. Well, Lightshade is a much more famous on the Adept side of things. Now, Nina did try a Stargate Adept build in game number 1. In the second game, as we were talking about, she was probably going to do a non-Resident Glaives Adept attack, but just was really cut short, kind of awkwardly on that third gateway and the pylon being found out. She could try and directly go into a Twilight Council, and then, you know, if it's too obvious, if Scarlett's fine and prepared for that, do something trickier with the follow-up. It's just what we see on Lightshade. This is a map that is short, so it makes kind of like the early to mid-game Zerg a little scary. If you're not doing anything to them, they could be rushing you, sending queens across the map, certainly. And then if it goes to the mid to late game, we're talking about a map that doesn't have a lot of chokes to use, which can be scary against a Zerg as well. But yeah, well, that's for much later discussion. Apparently, Nina's not going to go along the trend of other Protosses even today. We saw, Showtime go for Twilight Console opener, and just sticks with the Stargate.
Yeah, the double pylon block over here at the natural is kind of cute, and maybe just anticipation that, hey, Scarlett, maybe just only made 2 lings. There were actually 4 lings made, but those other 2 lings, I don't even know where they are right now. I guess they're making their way across the map or something?
They're in the natural already.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Almost get a probe. They might still get one, but they're most importantly going to be able to scout the Stargate opener. Again, when it comes down to, you can try and read into the warp gate timing, but it's always so Protoss can be intentionally ambiguous about that. So getting the actual confirmation, Stargate Void Ray first as well. It's always nice. She can get score paused a little bit later now. Still wants a probe though.
Ooh, nice macro there by Nina, by the way. Just keeping a lot of those probes alive against those 2 pesky lings.
Yep. They're not really supposed to get a probe. So if she had lost it, it's kind of like, I don't know, they're losing all their lings against a Reaper.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, Void Ray is going to pop out, should shut down a bit of that scouting information that Scarlett was hoping for from the Overlord. But Scarlett already saw that it was going to be Stargate opening, and it's really just going to be about Wow, okay. Void Ray misses the Overlord. I was going to say identifying that the follow-up is going to be the Robo, except the Robo is already scouted by the other Overlord. So Scarlett actually is super in the know about this game.
I'm not in the know quite yet. What is the Robo going to lead into?
Well, I mean, yes, that part is definitely up in the air, but I mean, not having a Twilight Council just yet definitely eliminates some possibilities, right? Like, it's less likely to just be a massive Adept Rising Enclave flood or anything.
Exactly. Like, if it was a Twilight Council, I'd be like, oh, well, yeah, there's art. Because a Robo Twilight Council, we're talking about Rising Enclaves, charge even, bring back that classic all in. Hell, even a 2-base blink attack. That existed for a little while. Or an Archon drop. They're going into High Templars or Dark Templars, but it really was just the Robo. So I'm just going to watch this unfold with the rest of you, because we also had a second Void Ray and now an Oracle, and I'm like, is this like going to be the weirdest hit squad of units? Like, what?
So what I really want to know is, after that Oracle, is there going to be another Void Ray? Because this could also be like a weird bait in Switch where it's like, hey, look, I'm making, I'm going up to the multiple Void Ray thing. You're going to probably encounter 4 Void Rays, and you'll have to get up your really fast Hydra Den and flood out a bunch of Hydras to deal with this, but it's actually just going to be, a bunch of gateways and stuff that are being added on, Immortals being made, and like a super defensive setup. I wonder if this is Nina basically saying like, hey, respect the Void Ray, but actually just playing really safe and defensive and like baiting out units early on from Scarlett.
Maybe, yeah. Shoot, I didn't quite catch all the build orders in their last series, so I don't know if it's something that she's done before. But it right now, without any previous knowledge, this looks very weird. Like, I like where you're trying to go with it, but I would say that if you're gonna try and puff up your feathers and say like, look at my Void Rays, oh my god, Void Rays, then you just wouldn't get Immortals at all, because Immortals are the least likely unit to go across the map. You can sacrifice Zealots, you can sacrifice Adepts, you could, not really with Stalkers, honestly, but the first 2, absolutely. And then Immortals? Like, and maybe thinking, oh, if it's going to be an early Roach push, I would totally understand this. And maybe that's what she's thinking. Maybe Scarlett did it to her previously, like on her ladder game or something like that. There's a big old Roach push to the middle of the map. There's been no sign it's been Roaches to the Void Ray, yet she continues producing, I don't know, it's just it's an odd way to ultimately get to the same outcome, which is charge +1 Immortal Archon. To start off with the Robo just felt like it was defensive and it wasn't needed.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just, I guess the earlier you get the Robo, the more Immortals you can make. I'm not sure, but
well, that is true.
Yeah, but that also relies on the fact that you're continuously producing Immortals and not halting at all, which we see a little bit of a gap as she actually saves up some of those resources to get up the Templar Archives, make sure that, like you said, charge and +1 weapons and stuff are getting started up, that all the massive flood of gateways is also coming up. So for now, it's just going to be, it looks like the 3 Immortals, a handful of those Zealots that are going to have charge, and getting into the Archons. But Scarlett is really taking this opportunity to just say, all right, Lurker Tech, Hive Tech, +2 weapons, like, let's get up everything else that we wanted.
I would have really been scared for Nina if this was going to be like a big old Hydra attack, and not all in or anything, just like literally the Hydra's went across the map. But Scarlett is very much so not thinking about that. She has got so much technology on the production tab, and she's still working on her Hydra upgrades. The Lings just scouted, I think, a very not scary army, but it still is like Scarlett's not prepared to engage with it. She's even going up to more workers, not making more Hydras. She's actually just opening up opportunities for later on. And that means, as we see her going to Lurkers, not a big surprise there, that Nina is going to have decent army against it. You brought up, like, if you bring up the Robo early, you have more Immortals. Yeah, kind of. You're right, though. She did stop production on it occasionally, but she does have 1 more Immortal, 2 more Immortals than you might have with other builds. And now adding on a second Immortal. So, again, we're going to eventually just get to a place where it's all good. It's all gravy. Everything looks like it should. The way we got here is a bit off.
Yeah, I think maybe saving grace there for Nina is that when Scarlett moves in and scouts and sees a bunch of High Templar, it's like, well, I don't know if they have Storm or how far you are off from Storm, so I guess it's a bit dangerous to attack in right now also. Maybe a bit of a saving grace there. Well, Nina's going to try and move in forward. Remember, there's no warp prism or anything just quite with the army just yet. It is starting to move across the map, and Ling's actually even catch wind of that, so Scarlett's going to be able to get in position, especially with those lurkers, and situate herself very, very nicely to push this army back, or at least slow down the push.
Yeah, now Nina has a pretty nice army, lots of storms, good number of charge lots helping out, and the immortal count that she's been building for a while. There's a couple more Archons, and it gets really scary. Storms are dipping forward. Ooh, trying to save them? Not gonna save them.
High Templar is very, very vulnerable on the front lines, but definitely looking for those big storms on a big Hydra clump or the Lings. And it's gonna try and poke in from another angle. The lurkers are not exactly super quick to follow, but it looks like Nina's not going to try and commit into that angle. She's got a little hit squad on the north side. Oh, the Warp Prism. Oh, those are all lurkers. There's actually 0 Hydras.
Oops, all lurkers. And those lurkers are actually awfully clumped up, too. This is a nice engagement for Nina. Oh, man, Scarlett underestimating Nina's, I guess, forwardness. She was like, yeah, let's take this battle. It ends up being a bit of a trade because lurkers be lurkers, but Nina just took down, I believe, every single one. She has lost her Voiders on the right side, but hasn't taken any economic damage this little run by. And Scarlett is forced to use a lot of her bank to replace, I mean, not just the lurkers, she also needs more Hydras right now, she's getting currently.
Yeah, especially considering we have +1 weapons coming up over there for the air army of Nina, and she's added on her next Stargate. So I guess there's the second Stargate being added on. So she is really thinking about that big air carrier transition. I guess it kind of makes sense as well since Scarlett also teched up to Hive and everything. You want to be ready for that kind of stuff. But, well, first she's going to try and make use of this army on the bottom left-hand side of the map. Finds a couple of the lurkers over here. Charge lots do not want to just charge straight into that blindly, but there's a lot of the army for Scarlett actually up on the top right-hand side, which I guess is going to be bad in the sense that Nina doesn't have to worry about the defense, but good if Nina actually finds an opportunity to move in because it's going to be half the army here.
Well, the lurkers now have some upgrades, which makes this a lot more difficult to move into, and they're not as clumped up. There's also not as much fodder. Right now, it might look okay for Nina, but all of her shields are gone, so the army starts to go down really quickly afterwards. The last few lurkers might just be able to win this out, and in fact, that they do. Nina is taking severe losses on the army, down 40 supply, losing her Nexus as well. She's got a 5th on the way, so if she can do some serious damage to her opponent, and she is currently with these Zealots, then maybe it can even out.
What a weird set of trades. I mean, Nina, I guess she kind of in some ways made the right call there in that she just went straight over to the other bases while she was actually engaging the lurkers at the same time. So the lurkers were trapped, couldn't help defend all those drones that just went down. But I mean, Nina loses so much valuable army supply over here. She's also just gonna try and right-click down the hatchery. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna work out. And a lot of these Zealots are just gonna end up dying for free. The army for Scarlett is still actually in the natural. It's just killed the entire natural. It's killed the Wallen that was over there and all those buildings that were a part of that. And even the third base, I feel like, is maybe gonna be a bit vulnerable if Scarlett just consolidates her army.
Yeah, Nina really needed to clean up the attack before it killed her natural. That was too fatal of a blow to take. And, for Zealots, while they were doing some pretty good damage, about 30 drones, right? They did get almost immediately cleaned up after I mentioned it. So not nearly enough counter damage. Scarlett takes victories everywhere. And while there's a blip on her income, there's a blip on her lurker counts, on her army supply. She quickly replaces it. Whereas Nina is down to just 2 bases. Only just now we're making that natural. And looking at a pretty poor army supply with poor upgrades too, by the way. It's +1 versus 3-2.
Yeah, just noticed that, and that is not the most ideal of outcomes there for Nina for sure. And Gonna be a bit awkward when you also have a decent amount of your investment and your resources that were tied up into building these extra stargates and getting up a fleet beacon, adding on, or was originally adding on +1 weapons or air weapons. It might have actually been canceled by those Hydras in the run by. Maybe Nina canceled it herself, but regardless, it is certainly not an ideal situation. Nina's gonna do her absolute best and her absolute darndest to just try and use microable units like the Warp Prism and the Immortals to dance around, buy time, using the best storms, the best engagement angles possible to hold on in this game. But Zombie Grub, it's just so hard to make it work against this many lurkers. How do you micro against it?
You don't. It's like 18 lurkers going on almost 21 lurkers. They can afford to buy cigarettes and alcohol at this point. Like, it's not great. You don't even really attack that type of army unless you have an air army, if I'm being honest. Like, I can't imagine a big enough concave from the Zealot and Immortals. Nina's down half the army supply and now is about to lose her third Nexus, if not her natural as well. Storms coming down look like they could be the key to victory, but there's actually just too many lurkers.
It really is. And as Nina gradually gets choked out over here in her natural and also losing all the probes over at the third, this is going to be the final hurrah over here. Scarlett does an excellent job, takes a 3-0 as Nina wishes her good luck.